When a Senate witness tries to rewrite Supreme Court precedent, redefine DEI as illegal, and dodge every direct question, it only takes one lawmaker to pull the entire thread. And today, Adam Schiff did exactly that, exposing not just the contradictions, but the dangerous political machinery behind them.
Ms. Dhillon, you recently announced that DOJ was launching an investigation into the University of California over its UC 2030 capacity plan, which notes that future growth of faculty and students should result in campus populations that better reflect and tap the talent of underrepresented populations who represent the majority of Californians. In the SFFA versus Harvard opinion, the Supreme Court held that nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise, allowing universities to continue assessing students' experience with race on an individualized basis. In that opinion, in his concurrence, Justice Thomas praised the University of California for achieving diversity through race-neutral policies, including preferences for low-income applicants and first-generation students, and recruiting efforts targeted at areas with substantial populations of people of color. Are the race-neutral policies like those used by University of California, which Justice Thomas explicitly praised in that opinion, now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
Well, Senator, first of all, the investigation that we've opened is an investigation, and it's an investigation into the hiring policies of the University of California system, not the admissions policies. That said, I have absolutely seen abuses in the admissions policies in using race as a crude proxy for discrimination. That's not the question I asked you.
Are the race-neutral policies praised by Justice Thomas now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
I think you're mixing apples and oranges, so I can't really answer your question.
You can answer my question and say, yes, they are now illegal. That is what Justice Thomas praised in terms of race-neutral policies, which include preferences for low-income applicants, first-generation students, things like that. Are you now saying that what Justice Thomas praised is now illegal in your view?
Senator, there's a difference between what you see on paper and what you see in reality, and I reject your premise. I'm not asking you about particular. I reject your premise that how California describes its admissions practices.
I'm asking you about whether you subscribe to the Supreme Court's opinion or whether you disagree with Justice Thomas' concurrence. You can answer that question, can't you?
In the abstract, yes. In reality, what you're describing does not exist in the UC system.
Okay, so Justice Thomas got it wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that.
Well, you are saying that because he was praising the policies of the University of California. You seem to be saying now that any university that gives a preference to low-income applicants is engaged in illegal DEI, or if they put a focus on first-generation students, that's somehow impermissible. After all the years of criticism of cancel culture...
If you think this clash is just about admissions, keep watching. Because the moment Schiff starts listing who Dhillon is actually trying to cancel, the hearing shifts from evasions to full-blown accountability.
You seem to want to cancel any institution that has views that you disagree with. In answer to the questions about law firms, you want to cancel law firms because they take on unpopular clients to you, to the administration. That is, if a firm represents someone with an adverse interest to the administration, which is their First Amendment right to do, and I would also say their duty to do, you would cancel them. You would cancel universities like Harvard or the University of Virginia that take positions and exercise their First Amendment rights contrary to what you think the administration wants to see. You would cancel the Associated Press for not using the ridiculous nomenclature of the Gulf of America. You're canceling now the Wall Street Journal because the Wall Street Journal had the audacity to publish an article about Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So this is what's going on in this administration. You've devastated the Civil Rights Division. Hundreds of attorneys, 368, have departed since January of this year. There's been a mass exodus from the Civil Rights Department. It is just a shell of what it used to be. They're being canceled. They're being canceled by you, by the department. Anyone that stands up to this president is at risk of being canceled. And I think what you're doing to use the sledgehammer of federal funding with universities to try to coerce them to accepting your right-wing agenda is disgraceful. And using that cudgel will have far-reaching implications, attacking research done by universities, academic independence done by universities. It will establish a dangerous precedent that can be abused by a president of any party And we should recognize that on a bipartisan basis, even though it does not appear that we do. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
What we just witnessed in this exchange between Adam Schiff and Harmeet Dhillon isn't just another heated moment in a Senate hearing. It's a snapshot of an administration using the language of law and order to justify something far more ideological, reshaping the boundaries of academic freedom, civil rights enforcement, and even First Amendment protections based on political loyalty. And Schiff wastes no time pulling that out into the open. The core of the confrontation begins with something very important: the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action. Justice Thomas, typically the most conservative voice on the bench, went out of his way to praise the University of California for achieving diversity without explicit racial preferences. He highlighted policies that have been widely accepted as race-neutral, supporting low-income applicants, first-generation students, and directing outreach toward communities that historically lacked access. These approaches have long been held up as models for institutions across the country. So Schiff isn't asking a trick question when he presses Dhillon. He's asking something simple and foundational. Do you consider these legally accepted race-neutral methods, praised by a conservative Supreme Court justice, to be illegal DEI? And instead of saying yes or no, Dhillon pivots, deflects, claims the question mixes apples and oranges, and tries to reframe the issue. Her answer isn't just evasive, it reveals the real aim. Because if the administration defines even race-neutral diversity efforts as unlawful, then any institution that tries to uplift disadvantaged students becomes a target. Schiff sees the pattern instantly. He understands that what Dhillon is doing is not a legal argument. It's an ideological reframing designed to delegitimize any attempt by universities to broaden opportunity. And the moment she insists that what Justice Thomas praised does not exist in reality, she inadvertently suggests the Supreme Court got it wrong. Schiff seizes on that contradiction, because once a witness admits the court is mistaken, the entire justification for their investigation collapses. From there, Schiff broadens the lens. This isn't just about UC's policies. It's about the culture being imposed by the Trump administration across institutions that are supposed to operate independently. Schiff makes it clear the administration isn't fighting cancel culture, it is manufacturing it. He walks through example after examples. Universities, canceled for disagreeing with political narratives. Law firms, threatened for representing clients the administration views as enemies, something entirely protected under the First Amendment and fundamental to the justice system. Research institutions, targeted for publishing findings or historical terminology that contradicts the administration's ideological playbook. Even major news organizations are not spared. Schiff points out that the Wall Street Journal is being pressured, not for reporting false information, but for reporting inconvenient information about Trump's connections to Epstein. That is the hallmark of authoritarian governance, punishing truth-telling to shape public reality. And then Schiff highlights something deeply troubling: the gutting of the Civil Rights Division at DOJ. Hundreds of attorneys fleeing the department in less than a year is not normal turnover. It's what happens when a division built to protect marginalized Americans is being repurposed to dismantle its own mission. Schiff names it bluntly. These attorneys are being canceled for refusing to carry out politically motivated attacks. His critique is more than just rhetorical. It captures a warning about the erosion of democratic norms. When a government begins using funding as a weapon to enforce ideological obedience, it sets a precedent that outlasts any one administration. What Dhillon calls enforcement, Schiff identifies as coercion, a direct attempt to force universities into alignment with a partisan agenda. In the end, Schiff's message transcends the back and forth. This clash is about whether America will allow its public institutions, universities, courts, media, civil rights enforcers, to remain independent, or whether political pressure will decide what is legal, what is permissible, and even what is true. And Schiff is crystal clear. If we allow the sledgehammer of federal power to reshape education, research, free speech, and civil rights based on political approval, we are stepping into a future where democratic institutions no longer serve the people, only the powerful. This hearing isn't just a moment. It's a warning shot about where the guardrails of American democracy are being tested. If you want more breakdowns like this, stay engaged, stay informed, and keep watching. Your voice is still one of the most powerful tools in this fight.